Welcome to the latest edition of AAA Backstage podcast. Today I'm with Sacha Lord, co-founder of the Warehouse Project, co-founder of Parklife Festival and the nighttime economy advisor to Manchester. This podcast is brought to you in partnership with Tysers Live. So Sacha, you're arguably at the top of your game really in Manchester. You've got a huge presence here. You're involved in Parklife, 80,000 capacity.
Yep.
One of the biggest, if not the biggest,
biggest metropolitan festival in the UK.
In the UK, and I believe the Warehouse Project is the biggest electronic dance
it is.
club night in
10,000 capacity.
And
welcome to Manchester.
Thank you very much. I've enjoyed it so far. So, clearly you're heavily involved with Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Manchester, and the nighttime economy advisor, as I mentioned. So you're a busy man. So, but how did you get to? I mean, obviously it's a long road, so there's the big question. But I guess the question is, 30 years or so ago, when you started out in this industry,
yep.
What was your motivation at that point? Were you, as a schoolboy, kind of dreaming of running a nightclub and a festival, or
No,
how did you get into this business?
Not at all. And looking back, I think if you look at anybody that has success, yes, obviously hard work, but you do need a luck factor in there. The luck factor I've had is A, born in Manchester, but B, born in the year I was, which meant that when I was in the sixth form, we were known as Madchester. So it was the years of Factory Records, Haçienda, New Order, James, Happy Mondays, and everybody in my class, and I went to a very good school, I went to Manchester Grammar, but everyone in my class wanted to be doctors or lawyers, and they knew what their career path was. I didn't have a clue, so they all went to Oxford, Cambridge, St Andrews, wherever, and I went to work in a clothes shop because I was I wanted to be part of that whole music scene. And anyways, it's a long story. There were 3 years between the clothes shop and my first ever event. But my first ever event was the 4th of July 1994, which will be 3 decades ago next year, at the Haçienda.
Was that Tony Wilson personally kind of called you in for that show, or how did you get involved? Because I understand it was a student night, is that right? Or
it was a student night, so no, over the years I got to know Tony Wilson. And I have to say, everybody references Tony Wilson and the Haçienda, and I think that's probably because he's the big personality. He was the man on the telly. But there were two people. There was Tony Wilson and Rob Gretton as well. Rob was more involved in the Factory Records side. He was the person behind the scenes. But no, it came about because a friend of mine at school, whose mum and dad were quite well off, quite well to do, for his 18th birthday, they rented him a nightclub in a posh place near Manchester called Oldley Edge, where all the footballers lived there. It's called the Golden Triangle. And on a Monday night, they rented him at a club called Yesterdays. And I went there, and obviously this is before Facebook or the internet or everything. He invited 100 people to come for his birthday. Word got out, 400 turned up. And I thought to myself, you know what? If I could persuade a club that's normally shut on a Monday or Tuesday to let me have it and charge everyone £3, there's probably something in this. And the first event I ever did was never, in my mind, the start of a career. It was to pay a few bills, actually, and see what it was like. But I loved it. And non-stop from there.
And was John Drape involved in getting you that first gig as well, or John Drape from Engine Number 4, who runs Engine Number 4 now?
John Drape has been absolutely integral to every single thing I've done throughout my life. Not just me, but Sam and Rich, my business partners as well. He's the man that can. If you want a road closure or building an event, you go to John Drape. The weird coincidence is, and it shows how small Manchester is, hanging on my wall at my office at home is the flyer. The night was called Scandalous, the first event I did. The flyer that I have to say was a really crap design, looking back at it now, but also the invoice from the Haçienda. They charged 17.5% VAT, which I guarantee they never handed over to M.I.C.E. But it was signed by John Drape, who was one of the managers at the Haçienda. So little did I know that at that point in 1994, John Drape that signed the invoice would be absolutely key throughout my whole career.
And so how closely are you working with John these days? Obviously he runs, Engine Number 4, as I mentioned.
John runs Engine Number 4. He's a shareholder, director on Parklife. He has, since the conception in 2006, Warehouse Project at Bonington's Brewery, John has done all the production for it, still doing the production here today. We're sat, this is the staff area in Warehouse Project. We've just seen some of John's team. And I never forget John's face when I said to him, because I did have a nightclub called Sankey Soap between 2000 and 2006. There's a stone's throw from here, a place called Ancoats, that back in the day, can I swear on this? Yeah. Ancoats was a shithole. I mean, honestly, there was no lighting, there were needles on the floor, taxis wouldn't drop people off there. They had to drop them off on Great Ancoat Street and customers would walk. We've now got a Michelin star restaurant behind where Sankey's was, and it's Cutting Room Square. It's incredible what they've done. But I got bored at the period of Sankey's, and I'd mentioned to John, we want to do some raves in Bonington's Brewery. And he looked at me as if I'd completely and utterly lost the plot. And as it happens, I think he was probably right, because we got the license through John's help. But myself, John, none of the statutory authorities, so the police, environmental health, none of us actually acknowledged the fact that the rave was right next door to Strangeways Prison, which is a Victorian prison.
Yeah.
And the story that will always stick with me for the rest of my life was on the very first night, 6th of October, 2006, we had Public Enemy playing. It was Thursday, and my phone was ringing consistently. And I never answer my phone if it's withheld, because it's normally some last-minute guest list. And anyway, it kept ringing and ringing. It's about 12 o'clock. I thought, I'm going to take this, because it was the governor from Strangeways Prison. And he was like, what time does this concert finish? So I said, 1 o'clock. It's like, oh, thank God for that. And it's like, well, we're back open tomorrow, though. And we go tomorrow and Saturday, we're on till 4. He's like, what do you mean you're on till 4 at the weekend? I said, yeah, but we're also here for the next 3 months as well. Anyway, he lost the plot, and it was a corrugated roof, very much like the back wall there. No noise proof, so the base was leaking, going straight into Strangeways. And he went on record, the governor, that the Warehouse Project was responsible for a spike in drugs in his prison during that 3-month period. And we were getting letters from prisoners in my office to say, I've just been on the internet, really enjoyed M.I.C.E set on Saturday.
Having little raves in their cells.
You can't send us a cassette of it, can you? And that's why we had to leave
wow.
Bonington's, and we relocated to Store Street, which again is around the corner from here, and that was the biggest air raid shelter in World War II. The walls were 12 foot thick, so we thought, noise isn't going to leak there.
We're talking about the early days, Haçienda days, and how things have changed so much in the area. I mean, back in that sort of Haçienda era, the Madchester era, there was also the kind of the media kind of started to refer to Manchester as Gunchester, and there was kind of a lot of criminal involvement, gangland environment. Really, I mean, how challenging was it to kind of get shows off the ground under those kind of circumstances?
I mean, back in when I started, it was pretty intense. It was horrific. You've got to look at people like Manumission. That Andy and Mike, M for Manumission stands for a man's Manchester. They left Manchester because they were intimidated, and without going into the detail, but one of them, the gangsters poured petrol all over him and said that they'd set it alight if he didn't pay. They left. For Manumission, which was quite a good thing to do, actually. Yeah. But yeah, I'm gonna drop it in at this point here. But there are some stories in the book that's coming out, 23rd of April, and there are. So I've been shot at twice. I've been petrol bombed once, and that's how it was in those days. And it's kind of funny now, because when you're on social media, and people have a go at you, they're sat in the back bedroom on their laptop going, "Oh, you're Warehouse Project hated it last night," and they start giving you crap about it. I think, well, I'll handle that.
Yeah.
But
I've been shot at.
I've been shot at. Yeah. I'm not worried about what you're going to say on your keyboard.
Here's a short message from our sponsor, Tysers Live.
Tysers Live is formed from two of the oldest entertainment insurance brokers in the UK. One of them out of Manchester, which is Dudson, and the other Robertson Taylor, based out of London. Over the years, we've worked with so many of Sacha's venues, partners, and connections, and indeed with Sacha himself. And it's great to hear his story in this podcast.
And in a sense, obviously, Warehouse Project is 10,000 capacity event. Obviously, the city's changed, the nightlife has changed, the way the nightlife sort of is run has changed. The industry's changed, worldwide, really. Do you feel that that's for the good? I mean, the fact that gangs aren't involved so much anymore at all. I mean, it's obviously much safer. It's more professional in lots of ways. Do you feel like it's all good the way that the industry has kind of progressed and become more professional, corporate in a way?
I do. I think I can only really talk about Manchester, Greater Manchester, because it's what I know best. I am so proud of where the city's at the moment in terms of nightlife, and I always reference it. This year, the Sunday Times said that we're the UK's capital of nightlife, and it feels that something, and Liverpool as well. Actually, I was at the Labour Party conference 2 weekends ago. Was it 3? I can't remember, but something is going on in the northwest that feels very much like when you reference Madchester back in the day. And Haçienda and everything that went on in those early years, I think we're having a moment again. And I think that's down to several reasons, but mainly the leadership across Greater Manchester at the moment. And I know we'll touch on Andy Burnham, but Bev Craig as well, the new leader of the council, they understand there's a real, let's make it happen in Manchester. I know there are other cities, I'm not going to name them, but it's very much of a computer says no. But looking at my career, how many cities could you walk into the town hall and say, well, I want to put raves on for 3 months in a disused brewery, and then, well, actually now I want to do 10 years in the biggest air raid shelter in the city centre. And now, actually, guess what? Let's go for the biggest nightclub in the world and stick us in a disused railway station. And they're all raves. And they have had incidents over the years that other cities would have gone, that you're shutting you down. But the council haven't. They've worked with us as an organisation. And that's the right approach. It's a sensible approach.
And I wanted to sort of touch on that whole, I was going to come to this later, but actually we'll talk about it now in the sense of the professionalism and the way that the industry has evolved. Obviously, there was the Manchester Arena tragedy, and obviously Fegan Murray has been a powerful advocate of change, and Martin's Law is in the pipeline. No one knows exactly when it's going to come into force and exactly how it's going to come into force as such, or what it's going to consist of at this stage exactly. But I guess the question is really, when you're putting on a show in this incredible, vast, cavernous venue, and when you're putting on you've got 80,000 people in Heaton Park for Parklife, the security job must be enormous. So, how much of your time and energy is sort of spent on that, and how complex is that really, if that's not too difficult a question to answer?
I think there's a few things I can talk about on that one. Firstly, Fegan Murray is the most incredible soul that I've ever met in my entire life. One woman whose son was killed, Martin, at the arena attack, for her to literally wipe away the tears and change the industry for the better, she's dedicated a life to that, and she's such a powerful person. It's phenomenal. I couldn't have done what she's done. I really couldn't. I don't have kids, but I can't imagine what she's gone through. But yeah, she's someone that we all have to thank, because she has improved our sector. Parklife took place 2.5 weeks after the arena attack, actually, which was the 22nd of May 2017. The morning after the attack, the first call I had was from an officer in licensing, Greater Manchester Police, called Ronnie Nielsen. He phoned me up to say, listen, I know you'll be concerned about Parklife. I've had it from above. Nothing's going to stop us. It's business as usual. And I think that sums up Manchester. That's very, very important, that. By pure coincidence, we had the 1975s on that year, which obviously has a Manchester connection. So I looked at what happened with the One Love concert, which was brilliant, by the way. It was phenomenal, but in my mind, you know, the likes of Coldplay, Katy Perry, Miley Cyrus, it was an international thing. It was a global thing. They had millions and millions of people watching that. So I wanted to do something more Manchester. And at Parklife that year, we had a tribute on stage, and I got the 1975s on. I invited Andy Burnham. We had the paramedics, the first attenders, the police, taxi drivers, hoteliers, public that opened the doors up that night. We got them all on stage. And honestly, Chris, 80,000 people, you could hear a pin drop in that moment when Andy made that speech. And there were tears on stage across the board. And they weren't tears of sadness, there were tears of defiance. You know, we've beaten them. And that one day was probably one of the most important days of my entire life. But security is a challenge. You know, at Parklife, we have north of 1,000 security. I know it's a specific number, but here at Warehouse Project, every night we have 128 members of security. And we do everything we can to mitigate any issues. So you saw the ticketing hall where people queue up here. Everyone firstly gets the attitude test when they come in. Then we check the IDs. Then they get patted down. We'll check people's bags. They'll walk through knife arches. We've got drug sniffer dogs. We've got paramedics. We've got doctors. We've got, we call them the angels that walk around, the welfare, to make sure, 12 of them make sure people are okay. We've got 3 ambulances on site. We go to such great lengths to make sure people are safe. And ultimately, you'll never stop drugs getting into a venue. It's impossible. And my argument, that you've heard this time and time again, Chris, my argument is, well, if you can't stop drugs getting into a Category A prison like Strangeways, what are we supposed to do with a field or a nightclub? You can't. So we do drug testing on site as well. And I am adamant that saves lives.
Yeah, and the government kind of reversed their view on that, didn't they? So, I mean, what's the latest situation? I should probably know, but what's the latest situation with that? I know that, you know, there's been a lot of criticism actually in this series when I was talking to Freddie Fellows at Secret Garden Party. You know, around that time, he was getting to the situation where they were finding it difficult to do, or the government had stopped them being able to do it. So, and they'd actually, you know, they'd seen the amount of incidents as a result of bad drug consumption go down hugely. So, I mean,
how ridiculous is this? We'd been doing drug testing at Parklife for 10 years. And it's not front of house testing, so it's never ever public facing. We'll take confiscations on the door. Please take them to a porter cabin, a secure porter cabin on site. We've got police in the porter cabin. We've got scientists that test the drugs. If there's anything concerning, we will take an image of it and put it on social media. So it might be like an orange tablet with Donald Trump's face on or something like that. We'll say you need to avoid this at all costs. So that works. And on another level, and I've seen with my own eyes, a customer that was very, very, very poorly, and I mean really poorly. And the doctors didn't know what to do to save this person's life. So they quickly ran to people's friends of the customer he brought in, give me a description of what they'd taken. They managed with the scientists to find something that looked very similar, tested it, and within 3 seconds they could tell the doctors what was in there. The doctor saved that person's life. Yeah. Saving lives is so important. 48 hours before Parklife, this year, 2023, we got a message from the Home Office to say, we're doing a U-turn, no more back of house drug testing. It was the most dangerous thing that I've ever seen, probably in my career. We argued it, they weren't having it. It was Suella Braverman. It came from the very, very top. And I'm not making this political, by the way, but she's quite dangerous. Her predecessor, Priti Patel, agreed quite rightly to make spiking a specific criminal offence. After working with women and girls across the whole of the UK, mainly from universities. And Suella Braverman came in and did a U-turn on that as well, so I don't understand really where she's coming from. Is it going to happen this this coming season? I really hope so, because it does save lives, as I've just said. Even the Home Office, Home Affairs Committee agreed with us, and Mike Hill from the NCIA who's been leading this. Everybody in my industry thinks this is the right thing to do. They turned around and said, yeah, we should carry on with this. So we're still fighting now, and we're not going to give up.
I wanted to go back a little bit to your relationship with Andy Burnham, because obviously you have a very strong relationship, and you've got a powerful voice nationally, but particularly in Manchester, and you're very vocal on social media about these issues, and you get noticed by government, and you keep banging the drum about all of these very important issues. And that's under your role really as nighttime economy advisor. Obviously that role exists in other cities in the UK, but it's certainly not a uniform approach across urban environments across the UK. So do you feel that there should be one in each city, or there should be a kind of one for the whole country? And then
I think there should be one for every major city. Absolutely. You've referenced other cities. We have the same title, but it's a different job role. I'm not contracted, I'm not salaried, and that is exactly the same job role that the West Midlands have taken. Their new nighttime economy advisor, Alex Claridge. So Andy Street, the mayor of West Midlands, he looked at what was happening here and said, yeah, that's the right thing. The reason why I believe it's the right model is I'm not constricted politically as to what I can say. Everybody knows I'm a member of the Labour Party, but more importantly to me, it's hospitality, our sector. That's above politics. So I don't have to toe the line. And Andy gives me the freedom to say things without having to have them okayed by his office first. And he trusts me to do that. And I think that's why it works. And because I'm not salaried, I'm not scared of losing my job and have to sit on my hands and toe the line. I just go out there. And I know sometimes it might seem a bit bolshy and a bit aggressive, but people see it. I don't know if you saw 3 weeks ago, I took out the biggest digital screen.
I was going to come to that.
In the city centre.
Personally thought that was fantastic, but
Well, I put it directly above the Tory conference, because a lot of my friends, my family who work at Parklife, and I'm not talking about my family as in my mum and my brother, we're a Parklife family, we work behind the scenes. And what I saw happen to their lives when the 3.8 million people were given no support at all, I had to do something. I was waiting for my moment. I know 2 people that took their own lives. I'll never forget it. It has scarred me. And that was my big 2 fingers to Sunak, because he was the Chancellor at the time. And he was caught off camera saying, and it's in the video, I put it up there, somebody said, well, those people will never vote for you again. And his response to that was, well, we don't believe they were Conservative voters anyway, which was pretty shameless.
Yeah, and also probably not accurate, and yeah, shameless more importantly. I mean, I knew so many people that were in that situation. I was in that situation, and when I started working at Access and talking to people whose businesses have been devastated by the pandemic anyway. Yeah. But this industry is made up of so many freelancers that didn't get any help. It didn't do any good at all. And then there was
it was disgusting.
Yeah.
It was disgusting.
So many people went to work in different industries. Thankfully, we're back on track a little bit in terms of the industry. I mean, obviously, Parklife has risen from the ashes of the pandemic. Can we go sort of reverse a little bit back to the sort of early days? I think was it 2007 you launched Parklife, is that right?
2010.
2010, sorry.
It was a one-day event at Platt Fields, so a different location now. And the reason why we did it, Chris, was we started, when I say we, I'm talking about me, Rich, Sam, John Drape. So we started to see this thing coming from America about an end-of-year prom, which never happened when I was at school, right? Halloween didn't happen when I was at school. But all of a sudden it was this big prom, this big end-of-year prom, and we were becoming more Americanised. And we noticed that there was nothing from Manchester University or Man Met or UMIS back in those days, whether it be a big end-of-year bash. So Platt Fields was right in the heart of Studentville in Fallowfield, to the south of Manchester. We put it on there, 20,000 people. And it sold out imminently. So the next year we went to 25, then we went to 30, and then we outgrew the park. And actually, we didn't want to move it to Heaton Park. We wanted to move it to Wythenshawe Park, where we've just had Noel Gallagher on. And this morning, as we speak now, we just launched Blossoms. But there was a problem with it. There was a covenant that existed on the park from decades and decades, and maybe a couple of centuries ago. Some landowner gave it to the council, but the residents had a say. So we couldn't do anything. We had to get rid of the covenant, which is gone now. But the council persuaded us to move to Heaton Park, which we were really nervous about, because you could walk to Plattfields if you're a student, you could walk to Wythenshawe Park, you couldn't walk to Heaton Park. But the Stone Roses had been there successfully. Oasis had been there successfully. We knew it could hold 80,000. So the council said, well, look, we'll give you a load of billboards and digital boards and help with your marketing, which they did. And they got it right.
Brilliant. And it's obviously, as we say now, it's 80,000. Live Nation came in and took a controlling stake in Warehouse Project, and
it's 50% stake.
It is 50. Okay.
Yeah, in 2016.
Sure. So how? Obviously, that's a huge cash injection. But I mean, what's that relationship been like? And what the sort of change? Has there been any dramatic changes, or have you just?
Do you know what? Fair play to Live Nation. They have just completely and utterly left us alone. We all struggled at the very beginning. The biggest, because Sam, Rich was so knee-jerk, and we never really, this will sound ridiculous, we never really did a business plan for anything. The back of our minds, on the back of a cigarette packet, if you fill it and you sell all the tickets, you're going to make some money. But we never, in those days, had Excel spreadsheets or meetings about accounts or targets or none of that. Yeah. So we did find it hard to begin with. For me to walk into the office with a parking ticket, can you pay this? Fill out this form. What do you mean fill out a form? Just pay the bloody ticket. No, it has to go through the system. That was hard to get my head around. Yeah. So that sign-up was difficult. And then we had a really good chat with Dennis Desmond, who's the CEO, said, look, we're struggling with this. Dennis is a proper old school promoter like us, completely understood it. So we worked together, we got through it now. But they are brilliant. I was down there yesterday. They do so many good things behind the scenes. They really do, but I think because they're this big corporate structure, they sometimes get a bit of a bad name, and I think it's wrong.
Yeah, I mean, there's always the conversation about artist exclusivity clauses, and that's been written about and talked about endlessly, really. But I guess you get to the point where it is business. If you're going to put an artist on in the city, you don't want the artist to play. I mean, if an artist is routing a tour, they don't pick different promoters and do two shows in different venues in the same city in the same month. It's just not how business has worked, and never has really worked that way. So
we get it. It gets spoken about here at Warehouse Project, people say exclusivity contracts. Well, it's standard across the whole music industry, not in the UK, globally. And the point is, if we're paying £100,000 for a big artist who's playing on Saturday night, we don't want him playing on the Friday night at another venue in Manchester. It doesn't make any sense. You say, okay, fine, well, they'll play there, and it's best not having them in the city month either side, or something like that, and that is very, very standard.
And on the back of coming out of the pandemic, obviously, you'd have hoped after having to go through such a sort of traumatic couple of years that there wouldn't have been a cost of living crisis, there's been sort of reports that actually some young people between the ages of sort of 18, 25 or 24, forget the exact age catchment, but there's been a reluctance among a certain percentage, or concerning percentage, I guess, to come out to events again. So there's a job to be done to persuade younger people. I guess there's an age group that kind of missed that point where they would have gone to the first festival maybe when they were 16, and that got delayed for a while, and maybe they just they didn't get into the kind of routine that maybe other generations have. In terms of young people, do you feel there's a job to be done by the industry to try and encourage and work towards bringing these people back in? I mean, is it even a concern? Do you feel like you're not actually seeing that on the ground yourself?
So you said events there. I don't think events are being affected at the moment by the cost of living, and I don't think they will But because we're not seeing it here, and other colleagues I'm speaking to aren't really seeing it, festivals aren't really seeing it. What it's definitely affecting are those high street nightclubs, or maybe a local pub. People are now not going out. Maybe you used to go out every Friday with your mates to the pub. You might do that now once a fortnight or once a month because cost of living's coming in. Those regular high street nightclubs that you go where they play the same, and it's not really about the DJ. The DJ's playing the music, but it's where you meet your mates and stuff. I would say more those carpeted nightclubs, but I think you know what I mean. Anyway, they're feeling it. I know they're feeling it, and it's it's very, very sad to see. But events like Warehouse Project or those big events where that's a global artist, you can't really miss that. People are still buying the tickets 6 months in advance. And that between now and then they might be going out less, but certainly we're not seeing it here at all.
No, I mean, I know there's been, Music Venue Trust has been sort of banging the drum loudly about the sort of fate of independent grassroots music venues around the UK, and there's lots of talk about artists not being able to afford to, grassroots artists being able to get out on the road now because of the cost of transporting their equipment, their van, whatever, just literally the cost of everything involved in touring. So I guess there is a need to kind of nurture the next generation, the pipeline of talent that allows, the Warehouse Project to exist, if you like, and the future of the Parklife and any other venue or festival. So do you feel like the government, the industry is doing enough to kind of focus on protecting the grassroots?
No, I don't. And I think one of the most ridiculous things I've seen for many, many years was when, and again, this is not politics, it's facts, Nadine Dorries was given the opportunity to do a deal to let artists with visas come in and out of Europe, and that was key. That was completely kiboshed. She could have done that with ease. She was given the opportunity and she didn't. So it's not viable now for these grassroots bands to tour Europe, which was absolutely key to success. What Music Venue Trust is doing is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And you're right, we need to protect those grassroots venues, not just live music venues, but grassroots nightclubs, smaller nightclubs as well, because when you go to Parklife and you see Stormzy on stage, who's not become an icon overnight. He started off in front of 20 people, 30 people, 100 people, 500 people, then suit that. So if that stops and these smaller venues close, the likes of Warehouse Project and Parklife won't exist within 10 years because there'll be no new talent coming through. And that's why we do our very best. So when we were walking through here, I said to you, this is our third room, the archive. We tried to nurture local talent in that. And it's the same at Parklife. We have a stage, again, we're nurturing local talent. And I think it's so important because if the talent line runs out, and if the government don't step in and do enough to help these smaller venues, by mechanisms like extending business rates or reducing VAT that you've spoken about it yourself. If they don't do that and they die away, they're going to kill the industry.
Here's a short message from our sponsor, Tysers Live.
Tysers Live works with all aspects of the entertainment industry throughout the whole vertical. We have clients who are freelancers, production companies, grassroots music venues, some of the largest venues in the world, as well as promoters for the huge tours that are taking place this year, as well as some of the biggest artists too. And we're based out of our offices in Manchester and London to service clients globally.
And in terms of the sort of festival industry, are you sort of concerned in any way about, obviously Superstruck's Blue Dot had a terrible issue with weather last year, so they're taking this year out at least. And yesterday, it was announced that NAS is no longer taking place. I think it's around 30,000, so that's pretty big. And obviously Parklife's, doing well. But I mean, are you still seeing, I guess there's a challenge, always there's a challenge around costs in every aspect of life at the moment. So obviously there is a challenge, there must be a challenge. I'm just wondering how confident you are about the future of Parklife and also the future of, the festival landscape, really.
I'm extremely confident about Parklife. The costs are the biggest issues, and it's suppliers, actually. I'm not having a go at suppliers, by the way, but with inflation that's going up, we can't increase our ticket prices in line with inflation. If we put our prices up by 8-9%, people be jumping all over us. And it'd be the wrong thing to do during the cost of living crisis as well. In fact, we're reducing our ticket price for Parklife this year to make it more affordable. But I get it, especially labour-intensive companies. So if you think about the cleaners, security, they've had to put their prices up because of the inflation and everything. So I totally understand it, but it becomes a point where it's unviable, which I believe is part of the reason why the likes of Blue Dot haven't done it. But also there's a challenge this year as well. It doesn't feel as if there's that much talent around. When you're booking the headline artists for festivals, you're not just dealing with UK festivals, you're dealing with global festivals. And when things aren't great in the UK, you can earn as an artist more money in Europe or in the States or Mexico.
Yeah. I don't want to make this too political at all, but it looks almost certain that we're going to have a Labour government coming in next year. If you could ask that government, that Labour government, Keir Starmer, for one thing for the live entertainment business, what would it be?
So I did launch a 5-point. I launched a 5-point plan. There's one thing. If I had a magic wand, I would reduce VAT for the whole sector to 12.5%. And would still be more expensive than the vast majority of Europe, which is between 8 and 9%. That is the one mechanism that if they introduced it, it would save businesses. And I'm not just talking about events, I'm talking about pubs, restaurants, across the board hospitality. It would save businesses, it would save jobs, it would save the supply chain, the whole ecology around us. That would be the one thing.
Great. And obviously, you mentioned earlier on, it's going to be 30 years of promoting in this industry. So that's, if I was wearing a hat, I'd be taking it off you for coming through for 3 decades and doing so well. But I mean, there must have been some really, I know this is a difficult question to answer, I appreciate that, to just kind of come out of a highlight. But I guess, there must have been some really, obviously you were shot at, that's not so good. Obviously that was a memory you're never going to forget.
It's not the best.
But in terms of the best, what would you say are among the kind of, the really positive lasting, memories, the first few memories that come to mind of your promoting
I think
career?
my proudest achievement, actually, to date, and I hope there's still more to come, because I'm not giving up, I'm not slowing down. I think my proudest achievement is not Warehouse Project, it's not Parklife. It was being asked to be the advisor to Andy Burnham, because I said I didn't get any A-levels. So if you'd said to me when I was working in that clothes shop, or when I was that 15-year-old kid at school, there was only thinking about meeting girls at lunchtime, not taking it seriously at all. If you'd said to me then, well, you're going to have the biggest nightclub in the world, the biggest metropolitan festival in the UK, and be advisor to Andy Burnham, I'd say you'd lost the plot. Or you'd help yourself to our amnesty bin that's over there. Two huge illegal raves during lockdown in Greater Manchester, one for 2,000, one for 6,000. And Andy phoned me up at home. It was like, you're the promoter, what can you do to entertain them? I can't even leave my house. How am I supposed to entertain kids in Greater Manchester to keep them in their homes? So for 3-4 days, I spent time on the internet and I came across this thing in Berlin called United We Stream. And I got in contact with Lutz, who was behind it in Berlin. I was like, this is cool. Can I nick the idea? I was just blatant about it. And his idea was they got a nightclub in Berlin, put a DJ in there, and it was free to watch from home. If you want to pay €1, €2, €3 due, goes to charity, helps everyone else. I thought, right, I'm going to do this, but I'm going to do it on steroids. Phoned Andy up. I think I've got something. I explained it to him. I could tell from his response he didn't have a clue what I was talking about, right? But for a 10-week period, it went viral. We entertained 20.4 million people, and I raised £612,000 by kind people at home watching it. Donated £1, £2, £3, tenors. And a lot of those freelancers we spoke about benefited from that £612,000. that is something I was really, really proud of. We could help them out. I think that's probably my proudest point.
I'm sure there's going to be others that I mentioned in your book that's going to be coming out next year. So, I mean, what was the thought behind that? It's obviously a landmark moment, 30 years. So is it just been an opportunity to kind of look back and chart that kind of journey?
Yeah, it's 30 years of, we've done a really good job of talking about the DJs and the acts on the stage. Really good job about that. But there are so many stories that just haven't been told behind the scenes. And I'm kind of amazed that the lawyers at HarperCollins are allowing some of these stories in, to be honest. They may have changed a few names on it, but there've been some really, really hairy moments and some like real head-scratching moments that we need to talk about, and now's the time to get them all out.
Great. Well, I look forward to reading it. I wanted to touch on the Sacha Lord Foundation that I believe is launching next year. Can you talk a little bit about what that's going to consist of and what your ambition and hopes are for it?
So we've now got charitable status, which I'm delighted about. My wife, Demi, she's going to head it up. And, you know, we say 30 years, and I'm not slowing down, but I'm looking back at a career now. And I'm thinking I need to do something to help the city region that's allowed me to have this career. And again, not many city regions would allow that. So I think a lot about the time when I was at school, when I was 15, 16, 17, and I really suffered from anxiety in the way that, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I can't work in a clothes shop for the rest of my life. I can't. So the charity that I've set up, the Sacha Lord Foundation, is to help kids in Greater Manchester between the ages of 16 and 24, get those young people who don't really know what they're going to do, but to bring them into my sector, into events and hospitality, and allow them a career, and hopefully a successful career that I've had, because you don't need A-levels, there are no barriers, and you know, you can achieve your dreams in this sector. So that is what the charity is about.
Excellent. Okay. And last question is, if you hadn't found your way into the sector, have you ever sort of sat back and thought about what you might have ended up doing?
I mean, luckily I don't have to think about that, but I think I'd be stuck in a clothes shop. I mean, it would be horrific, 30 years measuring legs. Honestly, I don't know. I just don't know. I was a lonely soul walking around, pretty clueless. And I'm just thankful I ended up in this. I may have been in Strangeways, you never know. listening to the Warehouse Project in 2006.
Brilliant stuff. Well, it's been a pleasure to meet you. Thank you very much, Sacha. Cheers.